I'm Rebecca Carvin. I'm founder of Art Plus Public Unlimited, an independent art consultancy that focuses on work outside of art institutions in the public realm. We work on projects across Canada, some in the US, and have done a number of projects as well in the UK. And I'm working with the City of Toronto now on ArtworxTO, Toronto's Year of Public Art. So if I could go to the next slide, as beautiful as this one is. So Toronto's Year of Public Art really comes out of the new 10-year public art strategy that the city had passed through council at the end of 2019. It was the first time that the city had sort of revisited any sort of official policy or strategy in about 30 years. So it was a really exciting moment, which involved a lot of public engagement in developing what the kind of core guiding principles are for the next 10 years of the city's public art program. And so that is a sort of like long-term policy piece, and the Year of Public Art, or ArtworxTO as it's now got its official title, is the kind of super public-facing, high-impact implementation kickstart launch of this 10-year strategy. So the two are very, very closely connected. The tagline you will have seen on the last slide of the 10-year public art strategy is creativity and community everywhere. And the Year of Public Art really takes those three pieces of that tagline and turns them into pillars of the ArtworxTO program, which I'm sure a number of you have looked at the ArtworxTO framework document at this point and already knew that, but we can go into that. Can I get the next slide, please? So there are a number of action items within the 10-year public art strategy, and those are sort of boiled down into recommendations and action items for the Year of Public Art. But yeah, if we could go back. So one of the key principles within both the public art strategy and the ArtworxTO Year of Public Art is sort of advancing Indigenous placemaking throughout the public realm in Toronto. We are far behind Winnipeg in this, but we are leading, we are setting an example for other cities. So we're really trying to recognize that that is a voice and narrative that has been largely absent from the public realm and public art landscape, and trying to promote that through programming, but also through, as I said, some policy pieces around changing ways that artwork is selected, opportunities are identified, and that sort of thing. So next slide, please. Yes, so there was 21 actions out of the public art strategy, and we've turned those into sort of underpinning the pillars of the Year of Public Art program, that is ArtworxTO. Next slide, please. So the first pillar is creativity. And in this strategy, it says creating new platforms for artists and community partners to create and experiment with public art. How we translate that for the ArtworxTO program specifically is actually one of the kind of pieces of this, this grant, this funding webinar, which is really looking at the fact that there has not been opportunities traditionally in the Toronto public art landscape for artist-led public art projects. And so trying to change that and shift that towards creating opportunities for artists to actually come up with public art projects. So that's how we're implementing this creativity pillar in the ArtworxTO program. Next slide, please. The second pillar within this strategy is community. Connecting the public with public art is fundamental to amplifying the impact of Toronto's collection, and the way we are sort of implementing that or turning that into an action for ArtworxTO specifically is through the other piece of this funding webinar, which is the partnership grants application, really recognizing that it's not the city's role to create content for this, but really to enable and bolster the tremendous talent and activity that is already thriving within the city, and to create opportunities for existing artist organizations, arts collectives, artists, to create kind of exceptional opportunities and experiences within the parameters of the ArtworxTO program. Next slide, please. everywhere. So the third pillar, the third kind of piece of the public art strategy tagline, and the third pillar for ArtworxTO is recognizing that certainly at least the Percent for Art program, having been tied as closely as it is to development, has really created a scenario in which some parts of downtown have tons of public art and others have none at all. And so the ArtworxTO program is really trying to make an effort to ensure that programming happens not only downtown, but further out within the city. But it also is, there's another side to the everywhere pillar, which is really doing a much better job at interpreting and celebrating all of the incredible public artwork and programs and kind of cultural activity that is happening in Toronto already. So that will be things that the city will be doing around digital platforms and really communicating and interpreting all of the activity, making people aware of what is going on in Toronto, and trying to help the art and culture story become more enmeshed with what people think about when they think about Toronto. Next slide, please. Yes, that's what I just said. As translating strategy into action, working in collaboration with partners in the arts, business, and government. Next slide, please. And I think I've got like 1 more minute in my time. And so, of course, the idea is that this is all going to lead into that ArtworxTO as a year of public art is not going to be just a kind of swell of activity and then back to business as usual. But that there will be legacies coming out of this that also are tied to the 3 pillars that are outlined again here. Can I get the next slide, please? And so these 3 pillars, as they translate into a legacy for ArtworxTO, are in the creativity pillar, the idea of embedding an artist into the city structure, into city building, with an artist in residence program modeled on successful programs in New York and Calgary and other places. The community section is to continue supporting the activity within the public realm of existing arts organizations, similar to what we're kickstarting here with this partnership grant application. And then everywhere is to continue to grow the digital platform specifically and interpretation to make sure that that expands and keeps going after ArtworxTO. And as I said, kind of embeds the story of arts and culture into the story of Toronto, as well as hopefully creating some kind of possibility for there being a less subsistence living of arts organizations and artists within the city going into the future. I think that's the end of my slides.
Great. So thanks everybody for your time today. My name is Jean Holmes. I'm the manager of the programming unit for the City of Toronto's City Cultural Events team. We are part of the Economic Development and Culture Division at the City of Toronto, and we are the team that produces Nuit Blanche annually. The producing team is made up of programmers and production supervisors who work with curators and artists to develop all the projects produced by the city. They also support the self-presented works that are developed and produced in partnership with for Nuit Blanche with partners like the city's major institutions, the AGO, the Aga Khan, 401 Richmond, Harbourfront Center, etc. And then in addition, for the self-produced projects created by individual artist collectives and arts organizations, which is really what we're talking about today, there is also substantial support that comes from the other arms of the city activity, like the communication and sponsorship teams and the transportation teams, but primarily we're going to be talking about project development, which happens mostly inside of the City Cultural Events team. Next slide, please. No, go back, if you could go back. There we are, perfect. Nuit Blanche's first event was in 2006. It's the next slide. There was an anticipation that maybe 80,000 people would come, and in fact, the audience had 383,000 people. It was so successful that the mayor of the time, David Miller, decided that it should become an annual event, and that's where we are today. Next slide, please. And then the next one. Now, more than 14 years later, we have an audience of more than 1.2 million people annually, making Nuit Blanche the largest free visual art event in North America. In 2018, Nuit expanded its city-produced exhibitions into Scarborough for the first time. And in 2021, our plan is to be event-wide with exhibitions and projects in all different parts of the city. Next slide, please. The mandate of Nuit Blanche is contemporary art, that projects are contemporary art practice, primarily visual art, but other disciplines are represented, that it's free and accessible, publicly accessible, that it's projects are transforming public space, that it takes place all night long, so from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and then it happens throughout the city of Toronto. Next slide, please. So we're here today to talk primarily about Nuit Blanche 21, which will take place Saturday, October 2nd from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. But we do have an event happening this year that will be a little bit different than what we normally produce, as one can expect in these COVID times. That's going to take place on October 3rd, and the details of that event are found at the website, toronto.ca/NBTO, but have not actually been announced yet. There's just a general overview. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to Dr. Julie Nagam, the Artistic Director of Nuit Blanche.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say hi, and I'm actually in Treaty 1 territory in the homeland, in the heartland of the Métis Nation, and I've got Jordan Stranger's work behind me. And I'm actually at the Forks, which is our most historic spot of the city. We've gathered for thousands and thousands of years. So I'm really excited to be the artistic director for Nuit Blanche. As Jean said, the largest free and public exhibition in North America, which is pretty exciting. The only tough news is that we are online instead of in real time and in public space, just like the rest of the world is kind of sitting and waiting. You can flip the next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about the curatorial theme. Yeah, okay. So that's a lovely picture of me. You're also seeing me in the flesh, not awkward at all. But basically, this is the first time I'm the inaugural artistic director. And so in the past, we've done it where there's been multiple curators in different key commissioned locations for those artists. And this is the first time we're going to try and do an overall arching artistic direction. The theme is the space between us. It obviously takes on a new meaning in our COVID world. We are excited to have artists from the circumpolar, the Pacific, and North America, or AKA Turtle Island for me. We're excited to think about how these kind of spaces between us are potential sites for sharing knowledge. And so all of us coming to land and oceans and territories for different reasons, this kind of belonging to place, connecting to place, the kind of stories that draw us into this specific kind of place that we now call home is what we're really interested in those kind of conversations and collaborations. Next slide. Just as Jean said, I have been tasked with the most incredible opportunity to go citywide, and so that means east, west, north, south, all of the directions, and the broader GTA. And I know that for most of you, Nuit Blanche has gathered mostly in the downtown area and a little bit in the last couple of years within Scarborough. We've also seen some movement, going north of the city, and of course the West End being one of the most prominent areas of kind of artistic production. So we're excited to kind of continue to push that into the West, into Etobicoke, continue to build relationships in Scarborough, and look at North York as a potential site. I don't know if there's anything else I want to add to that. I think we have one more slide. So there's different ways that you can be involved in Nuit Blanche. One is obviously in an independent project, which is kind of the heart of Nuit Blanche, where we have really incredible artists who apply for the independent project stream. This year, because we're not able to have physical projects in public space, many of the projects that were approved for the independent stream are being pushed to 2021. And so lucky for me, I had determined that we would have one theme for 2 years, and it has worked out to our advantage. So the artist receives a $1,500 honorarium. They can apply for additional funding within the TAC or the OAC or the Canada Council, depending on what area or what their work is going to be. And then the other project is TAC Animating Streets, which is we look at artists and collectives that want to animate or create work that is in a laneway or a streetway or a right-of-way is kind of the parameter for that project specifically, and you can receive funding up to $20,000. I don't know if I have anything else to add other than, you know, we're excited about Nuit Blanche and the kind of new online format and shift, you know, will be exciting to see in the next 2 months. And we're also really happy to think about the possibility of 2021 being our big launch with the Year of Public Art, and at the same time, the opportunity to gather again in public space and go citywide. So that's it for me. Miigwech, Marcy, thank you for your time.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Rupal. I'm a grant program manager at Toronto Arts Council. And before I talk about the OpenDoor granting program, which is a program that, one of the programs that I manage, I want to talk a little about the application support that we provide to applicants to Toronto Arts Council. So if you are an artist who wants to apply to a TAC grant, you can access up to $500 a year for yourself to cover the costs of any assistance from service providers that you require to put your application in. And that can cover a variety of things, a variety of services. You should contact the grant program manager that is responsible for your grant program at least 6 weeks before the deadline, if possible, to take advantage of that service that's being offered. Next slide, please. Perfect. So the other accessibility option that we have at TAC is a maximum of $5,000 towards eligible accessibility costs for artists incurred during your project. So what that means is for most grant programs at TAC that are open to artist collectives or arts organizations, you can request an additional $5,000 for your project to support the participation of any artists who are working on your project with you. So for example, if you are doing a theater production and you have an actor or your director or anybody on your artistic team who is deaf, then you can apply for ASL interpretation as part of that project. This isn't where you would apply for any kind of accessibility involved with your audiences or audience members or participants, but this is where you might apply if you're working with folks who have a disability or who are deaf, or if you yourself have put together a collective of artists who require the accessibility expenses. I hope that's clear. Can we have the next slide? And yes, oh, OpenDoor. So the last thing that I will talk about is the OpenDoor granting program at TAC. This is a granting program that is open to artist collectives, which TAC defines as 2 or more artists working together, or arts organizations. So this is not a program you can come to as an individual artist, but you can certainly form a collective and apply. And the reason that I'm here during this this information session is because projects that are aligned with ArtworxTO, formerly known as Year of Public Art, are eligible to apply to OpenDoor in the Big Ideas category. So Big Ideas is one of the 3 categories in OpenDoor, and you can contact me anytime to talk about your Year of Public Art ArtworxTO project if you believe that it aligns with the Big Ideas category in OpenDoor. If you want more information about OpenDoor, there's a full information session on TAC's Instagram TV page online, or you can reach out to me and chat anytime. But I just wanted to let everybody know that if you have a project that is aligned with ArtworxTO, you can apply to OpenDoor for that project. It's another option aside from Animating Toronto Streets, which Erica will talk about in a few minutes. Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks, Rupal. Erica, do you want to talk about the Streets program?
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so nice to see so many of you here and interested in all of these opportunities that are coming up. I want to specifically tell you about Toronto Arts Council's Animating Toronto Streets grants program. I also want to let you know that when you're applying for this particular program, I want you to know that it as well as OpenDoor is part of the strategic programs category of grants at Toronto Arts Council. We have two categories of grants. We have strategic programs, and we also have arts discipline grants. So if you're, say, a dance company who has an operating grant through Toronto Arts Council, you're also eligible to apply for a strategic programs grant, such as Animating Toronto Streets. So Animating Toronto Streets is a fairly new program. The next deadline coming up is going to be on October 1st. So you have a good amount of time to prepare. So it's great that you're all, thinking about this now. There are two funding streams, two funding categories within this grants program. So you can apply either for up to $20,000 to do a project as part of Nuit Blanche Toronto 2021, or you could apply to do a project as part of ArtworxTO Toronto's Year of Public Art 2021. And for that category, you could apply for up to $50,000. But you can't apply for both. I want to just clarify that. You can't apply for both a Nuit Blanche project and a Year of Public Art project. You have to choose. This category, this grants program is open to individual artists, to nonprofit arts organizations, and also to artists' collectives. So some of you may be doing projects where you're collaborating with other artists. So you may be considering whether or not to apply as an individual artist or whether or not to form a collective. And I want to just give you a tiny bit more information that might help you make that decision right now. If you apply as an individual artist, the grant that you get will be to you. So it will be going to you in your name. It will be deposited into your individual bank account. You will get a T4A for that amount. So you will need to figure out how to write that off on your taxes or whatever. If you apply as a collective, you simply need to come up with a name for your collective. And you need to have a unique email address for that particular collective. So it can't be the same email address you already have used in your individual artist account with TAC. You have to have a different email address. And the only sort of bureaucratic thing you need to think about is that you will, if you get the grant, you will need to go and get a bank account set up in that collective name with a bank, which isn't too hard to do. So if you need any support thinking through any of those things, just get in touch. We're always happy to talk to people. We're always happy to support you in thinking through your grant application, talking about your project and giving you feedback. We're really just here to help you put the best application you possibly can through. And yeah, so we're really happy to schedule a Zoom hangout with you to talk through your project. Happy to look at a draft of your application before you submit it. We're just really here to support you as an artist. So yeah, I just wanted to go over just a couple of questions that people often ask, and also some sort of requirements for this particular program, Animating Toronto Streets. The thing about this program that makes it unique, and you're certainly welcome to go to any of Toronto Arts Council's arts discipline programs to apply to do a project as part of the year of public art, you can certainly do that. This project has some very specific requirements attached to it, which may work very well for some artists and maybe not so well for others. So one of those things is that the project needs to take place in or be experienced from the public right of way. And so what do we mean when we're talking about the public right of way? Like what we're really talking about specifically is areas of the city, mostly roads, streets, sidewalks, and laneways that are managed by Transportation Division. It's a very specific legal definition, and the reason for that is that the funding provided for this particular program doesn't actually come through the TAC's regular grant that we get from the City of Toronto for our operations and funding, but it comes through a different source, and that source is it's a development tax. And the logic behind that tax is that when developers take up space on the sidewalk or on the road, they're sort of creating a burden on the public realm, and then so developers need to sort of pay that back to the community, and then what gets made is art that the community can you know, benefit from. So the idea is that it needs to be you know, you participate in this work, or you view it, you experience it either in the street, on the sidewalk, that's visible from the public right of way. So if anyone has any questions about that, or you have a particular site in mind and you're really not sure if it fits, just get in touch with me, and I would be really happy to help you sort of figure out whether you think your site is going to be an eligible site or not. So in terms of the Nuit Blanche projects, the projects need to take place you know, during the Nuit Blanche schedule, which is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. They need to take place in Toronto in the public right of way. They need to be free and open to the public, and they have to be accessible. So they should be AODA compliant. And similarly with ArtworxTO, all those sort of similar requirements are in place. They need to take place primarily during 2021, which is the year of public art. They need to be significant in duration and or scale. So I'm going to just leave it there. I feel like folks will probably have a lot of questions. If they're very specific, I would recommend you book a time to have a conversation on the phone about it, or on the Zoom, whatever you prefer. If anyone has questions, they can put them in the Q&A certainly right now. Okay, so I think I'm passing it over to Rebecca to talk about the ArtworxTO partnership grant. Is that the truth?
I think so.
Okay, great.
Am I unmuted?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, great. So I have actually just sent everyone the link in the chat to the grant application, which is online at the ArtworxTO website, and Mohammed is has also put it up on his screen for us to walk through. This is just the front page of the grant. What I thought I would do is just go through some of those kind of core pieces that Erica just went through on her slide, and then open it up to question and answers, because I think there are going to be quite a few. But just to review again, the purpose of this grant is to enable exceptional projects to happen for ArtworxTO by Toronto's artists and arts organizations, things that are outside of their regular purview and are in the public realm, and really kind of galvanize the arts community to bring ArtworxTO to life, and to kind of give real funds to people to be able to do that. Recognizing that, as I said, there is a tremendous amount of talent in the city, and so the purpose of this is to really kind of put some backing, show the city's conviction that that has a real value and role in creating a vibrant city, and to kind of enable some of those projects to happen. So the deadline for the application, this is really kind of like just the details. Deadline for the application is September 10th. Value of the grant, so we're saying the value of the grant goes up to $100,000. But the purpose of the grant, as I keep saying, is to help help artists and arts community do something that they are not, haven't otherwise had the resources or ability to do. So the grants go up to $100,000, but they are as low as $3,000. So do not feel that you have to put on a mega blockbuster project proposal to be considered for one of these grants. We want to hear from people who have not.
Sorry, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Sorry, the interpreter's just interrupting. You said it went up to $100,000 and as low as $3,000. Thank you.
Sorry, not $3, $3,000. $3. As low as 3,000. So the idea really is to try and make sure that we are enabling projects from, a range of organizations and artists, and giving a platform for voices that have not been traditionally part of the public art landscape. So the eligibility for the grants is Toronto-based artists or arts organizations. If you are, that does not mean that it has to be a Toronto-based organization working with Toronto artists. It does mean, however, that if you are an artist not based in Toronto, you would want to find a Toronto-based organization to partner with, and it also means that it doesn't have to be both components, but there has to be either the artist or the arts organization based in Toronto. In terms of medium, this is not just for visual arts. What we've done, we've come up with a definition for the purposes of ArtworxTO of public art that attempts to be inclusive of various different media, but while also ensuring that there is some return in terms of audience experience from investing in these artworks. So the definition that we've come up with that you'll find in that grant application is the project is implemented on a scale that would be noticed as out of the ordinary, is significant duration, for example, installed over several months for visual artwork, or multiple performances occurring over an extended period of time for performance-based work, is realized in inclusive, barrier-free sites that are always accessible, always publicly accessible, and that demonstrated intention to engage with the public, either through plans for promotion, interpretive tools, etc. So essentially, if you if you are a violinist and you play your violin in the park and you don't kind of let anybody know that you're doing that, and you just sort of do it on your own, that wouldn't qualify. But if you are if you put together a proposal that is a series of performances and you intend to let people know that you're going to put on these performances, and your intention is to share that art experience in the public realm with an audience, and it's over a period of time, and it is something that is, as I said, of a scale that people would garner attention, then that is something that does qualify in terms of the definition of public art for the purposes of ArtworxTO. I also wanted to look at the tiers of partnership page, which I think is just after this page in the grant application. It's the one, yes, that looks like a cell phone data plan. Nope, yeah. So basically, as I said, there's the intention with this kind of pillar of the ArtworxTO program is to support all of the activity that is going on. There's going to be a tremendous amount of political will and support with the ArtworxTO program, and marketing heft and clout. And we intend to, at the even projects that do not qualify for funding, if they come in as partners with us, we ArtworxTO wants to make them part of the announcement, the quarterly announcements that will be coming out of the mayor's office, and the different marketing communications tools that the city will have at its disposal. We want to direct the attention that we can garner through those towards the projects that our arts community are putting together. So that's sort of like a minimum partnership commitment from the ArtworxTO office. Then kind of one level up from that is helping facilitate some of these projects through City Hall and through the city departments. So Erica mentioned sites in her project, and that is something that is difficult. Finding a site or doing something in a public site in Toronto is difficult, and the ArtworxTO office has production staff that are hoping to help navigate some of the obstacles that might be in the way of putting something up in public sites, as well as the next tier, which is kind of almost a matchmaking service, where potentially an artist will come forward with a preferred site that when the city technical team reviews the proposal, it's determined that the site is not at all feasible. The city will help to try and find an alternative site that does make the project feasible. So that might be actually putting an applicant in connection with some kind of somebody who actually owns a site or has some kind of property that might be able to host this project. And then of course the kind of greatest commitment is all of these things plus funding. Yeah, I think one more piece on the sites before we move on, and I want to open the, if we are ready to do that, which I think we are, open up to questions, is, as I said, there may be, there's been a lot of questions through the ArtworxTO email, which is at the bottom, which is on the, at the link that I shared in the chat there, around sites, and whether it's preferential to come forward with a site or not have a site. If you do have a site in mind that is city owned, it is good to identify that, but also to identify what it is about that site that makes it ideal for your project. Because as I said, there are lots of issues around public sites that might not be readily evident to somebody outside of the city. So it'd be good to know what it is about that site that you want, that attracts you, and so that the city can help you find an alternative site if necessary. It's also important to consider that there are lots of the definitions publicly accessible that could be also privately owned. So there are, mural projects, projects within, say, shop windows, ways of thinking about public accessibility, but actually having a site partner that in some ways might be easier to work with than trying to put something in the public. It's not necessarily, so what I'm saying is if you do have a partner like that and you have a site in mind, then that's great. And if you have a site in mind that is a public site, that's also great. And just know that we might have to work with you to find an alternate site. And one last thing on sites is just returning to the everywhere pillar that I mentioned before. There really is an interest in making sure that we have a lot of activity and content outside of the downtown core. So when thinking about your preferred locations for things, really try to think about not focusing everything on downtown and some of the other areas of the city. We are going to have, as part of our ArtworxTO program, a network of community cultural hubs around the city that will become sort of headquarters for information on ArtworxTO, and we'll also have art programming within them. And so thinking about how those will actually also be acting to direct people to things in the immediate area. And so projects outside of downtown will also benefit from people knowing about them through these community hubs. Are we ready to open that up to questions?
Maybe I can start reading some of the questions out, and if the panelists can just answer in any order that they wish. So we have a question from Jose. Jose says, is it possible to propose a public visual artwork without a specific site in mind that is adaptable to different potential sites? Or is it better to have secured or have thought about a specific site?
This is the ArtworxTO grant, yes. Well, I guess it applies to the Animating Toronto Streets grant as well. It is good to give an indication of what kind of site you would be interested in. And of course, if it's a project that you're developing that is, comes out of the site that you're thinking about, then then that needs to be part of the proposal. If you do, as I said, if there's a scenario in which you're proposing a site that is publicly accessible, but you're working with a partner and they're able to say, yes, you can use this site, then certainly do include that in your proposal. But if you're looking at public sites, then let us know if you have some in mind, or and what your kind of preferences are. We definitely want to know that, as we'd be trying to help you. Our ideal would be to site your project at that site, if that's where, if you have a preferred site. But knowing that there are often complications that are not kind of obvious to people not within the city structure, we want to be able to help you find a site that also works for your project.
I would say the same follows for Nuit Blanche. Probably, I don't know, 70% of the applications that we received in both the Animating Streets and Independent Project streams last year came without confirmed locations, and we worked with those artists to site those projects, or are working, I guess I should say, are working with those artists to site those projects for 21. So it ideally, having a relationship with the venue that you want your project to be sited in or the location is often bridges those more challenging siting conversations. So if you know the site, if you have a relationship with the people who own the site or who are hosting you at the site, then it often makes it much easier than if it's a cold call.
Great. So another question that we have is, the network, it was mentioned that the activities need to span over a longer period of time, question mark. Are there any guidelines of how long the projects need to be substantially big enough?
So we're trying to create a definition that is as open as possible to people working in different media, and for people to be able to create something with the means that they have available. So in terms of duration, as I said, for performances, so for example, in the last round of the Animating Toronto Streets grant, we awarded a project that is going to be, that is a performance piece that has one hour long performance, 30 days in a row. You could see it being a performance or a screening or whatever it is, once a week for a period of several weeks. The idea is just to be able to create a landscape in which people would be able to hear about an event happening, and then, try and catch the next one if they missed that one, let their friends know about it, that there is going to be a possibility for an audience for that work. Similarly for size or scale, things, it has to be something, it doesn't have to be a 40-foot tall sculpture at all, but it has to be something that is noticeable within the public realm. And we're trying to, I know that is a vague answer, we're trying to keep it, as I said, as open as possible to allow as many people at different kind of stages in their careers to be able to contribute something to the program.
Awesome. And I just want to mention that if you have more specific questions, the contact information for everyone on the panel here is on the screen. So please take note of that, and we welcome any specific questions that you have with regards to your project. You can email the program managers and everyone else. I have another question for Rebecca. It says, the network of cultural hubs Rebecca mentioned sounds interesting. When will details be released, and how will programming decisions be made?
The programming decision, so we are actually, for the network of cultural hubs, the locations of those are being finalized as we speak. We are also, and this is an opportunity to mention now, although the call won't be open until next month, but we're going to be, for the community cultural hubs, we're actually going to hire emerging curators to each take on one of those hubs and help and work with us to pull a program together that is specific to each hub, but also speaks to the overall ArtworxTO umbrella. There are some program elements that will be fixed within the community cultural hubs program, things like working with the local art service organizations and arts networks. We're working with the Aboriginal Curatorial Collective on getting the call out to curators. We're looking at hiring BIPOC curators for that opportunity, and some other pieces that we're kind of fixing as part of the program, and then allowing these curators to really develop a program at each of the hubs that has its own sort of curatorial focus, but within the larger ArtworxTO umbrella. So all of that will be, we'll have much more to announce around that in October. But the call for curators is coming out at the beginning of September.
Great.
And I put a couple of questions forward that I promised people that I would bring up that I couldn't answer in the chat earlier. My first question, I think that you covered this, Rebecca, but I feel I've got this question in the Q&A multiple times, and I feel like I know the answer very clearly for TAC, and the question is around, you know, is the ArtworxTO Partnership Grant Program available to Toronto residents only? And so the answer for TAC's programs is yes. For an individual, you have to be a Toronto resident. For a collective, the majority of your collective members have to be Toronto residents, so more than 50%. And as an organization, an arts organization has to be located in Toronto. So what would the answer be for ArtworxTO Partnership Grant?
So I think I was kind of clumsily answering that earlier. It's similar, and it's just that yes, either if it's an individual artist, they need to be based in Toronto, otherwise working with an arts organization that is based in Toronto. If it's an arts organization based in Toronto, the artist that they work with does not have to be based in Toronto. They could be an international artist. And as I said, an artist could be international if they're working with an arts organization based in Toronto. And what was the third thing? The collective. Yes, the majority of artists within a collective should be based in Toronto.
Thank you. And one more super quick question. If a project has already received funding as part of Street Art Toronto, would they be eligible to come forward for an ArtworxTO partnership grant?
That's a good one. Well, certainly other organizations that do receive funding from the city, like the local art service organizations, are eligible to put applications in. So I would tentatively say yes, but that I need to confirm that before I talk about somebody else's money without really knowing. What I would say is that yes, there is the precedent for and we have already said yes to other questions around organizations that do receive money from the city as part of their operating. They are eligible to put applications in. So, you know, if it was up to me, I would extend that to a project that already has funding, but I will double check on that. If whoever is asking that could send their email, that would be great. Actually, that's a question. Are we posting all of these? I mean, there might be more than just the one person who's asking the question, wanting to know that answer. How do we get that back to people?
Yes, so we will be we are recording this, and we will be posting this on our YouTube channel as well as our Instagram page. So feel free to check it out there. Yeah. There is one question that I've seen a few times, Rebecca, and everyone else maybe can answer too. Can some of the events be digital?
Yeah, we have approved, again, in the first Animating Toronto Streets granting round, we approved a project that was a augmented reality proposal, sorry, that was in response to existing murals within Toronto. If it's we definitely open to considering the online as a public forum, but we do also, especially in post-COVID, we really do want to make sure, and this also goes to the eligibility of Toronto artists and organizations. We want money and activity to be coming back into Toronto's streets. So if it is a digital program, we want it to be something that is experienced, you know, as a public artwork. Even though we are recognizing online as a public platform, we really want arts to be a driver towards kind of bringing Toronto back to life. So we'd love it if it's a digital program to be something that is connected to experiencing the city. I see a couple of questions. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, which I'm not very good at, but I think there are a couple of questions around whether multiple projects can be, proposals can be submitted by the same group, and the answer to that is yes. An organization or an artist can submit multiple proposals to the ArtworxTO grant. An organization or artist can also submit proposals to both the ArtworxTO grant and the Toronto Arts Council Animating Toronto Streets grant. And I think I saw something as well about a project that is made up of multiple smaller projects, and whether that was eligible. And I would say yes to that as well. Maybe I misread the question. As I said, I can't read and talk at the same time. And I also see one about billboards. Are billboards eligible as sites? Yes, definitely.
I just want to clarify in terms of Toronto Arts Council's eligibility for both OpenDoor and Animating Toronto Streets and any of our programs. So if you're applying for a grant, you cannot apply to the same competition with multiple applications. And so if you're applying to Animating Toronto Streets for an ArtworxTO project, you can only submit one application.
Yeah, sorry.
And
okay.
I'll just weigh in, Rebecca, on the street art question, which is if you're funded for a project with street art, can you also apply to the Artworks grant? And you cannot apply for the same project to those funds. You could apply for a different project to Artworks than the one that you were funded at street art for, but it can't be the same project.
Okay.
I also just wanted to go back to the conversation we were having about out-of-town artists and in-town artists. And partly the reason, I just wanted to clarify, partly the reason that we have limited that for these projects, primarily for Nuit Blanche and for Animating Toronto Streets, is that those projects are self-presents primarily. So you produce those works yourself with the funds that you receive. And so it's important that you're here in the city. It's really complicated to try to create a project and install a project when you're outside of the city. So if you're in Oakville, potentially you could be eligible for an independent project at Nuit Blanche because you're close. You wouldn't be eligible for a TAC funded project because you're not inside of the city of Toronto. So that's the sort of differentiation for us. And I think there's a logic also behind the multiple applications to different city funds. It's really about getting more artists, money into more artists' pockets, right? So that if you as an individual artist are applying for the same project to multiple funds, we'd rather fund a different artist or a different project than the same project and the same artist over and over again, if that makes sense.
Great. There's a question here about, so this organization says, is it possible to have an ArtworxTO project without a specific artist yet? We are a BIA and looking to have art on our streets, but we need to go through a call for artists.
Yeah, I think you'd have to articulate in the proposal the process through which you would be selecting an artist. And yeah.
Great. And there's quite a few questions about COVID and how that will affect like production of things on the streets specifically, like fabrication of things needing to be open, so to speak. Can everyone just speak a little bit about that? And does the city have any resources to support the artists with regards to like production?
Rebecca, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, I have something about you. I want you. You're more officially city, so go for it.
Don't get carried away. I mean, generally, the short answer is yes. We will be working with artists through the different programs around citing, around execution of projects. You will be responsible for your own work, for producing and presenting your own work, but you know, in terms of the location and the permits or the parameters around COVID, all of those things are things that we can support you working through, and we'll have a certain amount of resources available to you. It will be much, I would say, much more of a consultative process than let us do this for you process, if that makes sense. There are a number of available guidelines and information pieces or tools that are being developed through different city services. So things like a program called Lights On, which is about programs in performance spaces. And there are similar programs that are being developed around projects in parks or projects in streets. So I believe that there will be sort of more information tools. I think our hope is certainly for on the Nuit Blanche side, our hope is that by next October, we will be much more back to a more normal way of being in the world. Cross my fingers as I say that. So the conditions and concerns now about physical distancing may be a little bit less rigid a year from now, or a year and a few months from now. So that's our hope. But for ArtworxTO for the earlier part of the year, it's probably a bit more challenging.
I would just add to that that one of the things about art in the public realm with respect to a not quite post-COVID world, or everybody kind of the legacy of COVID, is that it is very it is quite social distance friendly in that it's very scalable. It can be experienced from in terms of, you know, how close people need to get to each other to experience it. It's an outdoor, generally outdoor activity. So these are definitely the kinds of things you want to think about as you're developing the proposal, is that we will still be you know, actively social distancing, but that's you know, if anything is kind of resistant to that within arts production, public art is probably the most resilient in that regard.
I just wanted to extend this note from the Q&A here, that if we could please, and this is Erica from TAC speaking, if we could please just say who's speaking, because I think it's hard to distinguish.
Can people not see us?
People cannot see us.
Oh man, okay.
While I'm talking, actually, may I put another question forward from this is sort of a bunch of questions in the
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is the interpreter. Again, if you are going to speak, if you could just let me know who you are, that would be really helpful. I don't know who's speaking right now.
This is Erica still, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
And thank you for that, that's good. Okay, sorry, there's just a question and I just lost it. This is, I think this is for you, Rebecca, regarding ArtworxTO. This is a question around, there are a few questions around maintenance and removal. Whose responsibility is that? Should that go into the budget? Should artists plan for maintenance and removal labor, etc.?
Yes, there's actually a line item in there for decommissioning, but I will say that, so this is not really a channel to get a permanent artwork installed in the city. However, there is an openness and appetite for works to stay up a little beyond the end of 2021, should they be faring well and should people be amenable to that. But the intention is that this is these are works that go up for 2021. Having said that, if you are developing a proposal with a partner for something, I don't know, like a mural or something that can stay for longer, that's not an ineligible project by any stretch. That's great too. It's just that if it's something that is in out in public space, the intention at this point is that it's something that this is a program for a year, and that artists should budget for having to remove their work as well. There is an openness, as I said, there's an openness to considering things staying beyond, December 31st, but that's not something that you should plan for at this point.
Sorry, Rebecca, it's Jean here. I just am going to weigh in on this as well, that I think that the question is about the budget, particularly. You should include all the costs associated with installation, exactly. Maintenance, strike, everything should be part of that.
Yeah, and that's in the budget form that's in the application.
I think there's a really important question here in the Q&A that I want to put forward, and that is, and I guess this will sort of go for all of the programs being talked about here today, is there a priority for BIPOC artists?
There is a priority for, there is an opportunity to give, to recognize traditionally marginalized voices within the public art landscape. And so, yes, there is definitely, that's actually in the, oh, I meant to say there's going to be a FAQ up on the city's website right beside the grant application. Should be by tomorrow. It was going to be earlier this week, but that is addressed in there as well. Yes.
There's a question that keeps getting asked. Someone is asking, I know you can apply for up to 100,000, but what is the total amount of money being handed out for ArtworxTO?
For the ArtworxTO through the grant program, there is in this calendar year, there's $1 million allocated for handing out through the ArtworxTO grant program. There is also, and that's money that is within the city budget for ArtworxTO. There's also sponsorship money that is coming, that is actively being pursued at the moment, that will bolster that significantly and will be coming in later in the year. And there will be city money in 2021 as well. So our intention in allocating funds for awarding these grants is to be able to award up to $1 million in this first round, and then also have some applicants that are earmarked for as other funds come in, which will be happening. They're just not in hand right now. We can't spend the money that we don't have in hand.
Great. Related to that, there's another question asking, will ArtworxTO fund 100% of the expenses, or do we have to show our project has alternative revenue sources?
No, you do not have to show that the project has alternative revenue.
Awesome. And then someone else is asking, can we talk about the content and the selection procedure, and how clear you want the artist to be about the relation of their work to Toronto specifically?
So the grants will be awarded by a peer review panel that includes members of the Mayor's Executive Advisory Committee, who are a group of arts professionals and sort of industry experts who are advising on the overall ArtworxTO program. So 2 members of that committee will be involved, people with art expertise. There will also be 2 members of the external working group, which are another group of industry experts who are helping guide implementation of the program. And then there will be 3 completely independent professionals that are arts professionals that are helping adjudicate the granting process. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
That's okay. So I think they were asking about the processes of adjudication and the artist's relationship. How much in detail do they have to go in with regards to their relationship to the City of Toronto?
Okay, so the project proposed does not have to be about, about the City of Toronto. The vision for ArtworxTO is kind of enabling artists to tell the stories of kind of living in the urban space, to kind of reflect on living in our contemporary urban environment through the voice of artists. It does not necessarily directly have to be about Toronto. It's more kind of lateral than that. And you said also about the process. So the submissions will be reviewed first for sort of completion, and then looked at by this peer review panel for sort of artistic merit and interest and concept, and then they will be, before actually being finally selected, they'll be reviewed by the technical team, which I referred to earlier, to kind of flag any major technical issues, and then the peer review panel reviews them again to actually select the those that will get the grants.
Great. Sorry, I keep forgetting to say, this is Mohammed speaking. I have another question.
Sorry, it's Jean. Can I just also respond to that question, please?
For sure.
For the Nuit Blanche stream of Animating Toronto Streets, there is a section that is specifically about site, and it is much more about place than it is about space. So it's really important in the overall sort of assessment of projects for Julie, who will ultimately be the one selecting projects in partnership with the jury, the Toronto Arts Council juries. But from an artistic director perspective, it's important that there's a resonance between the project and where it is. It's not necessarily, doesn't need to be explicit, but if there is a reason artistically that you're choosing a particular location, it's important in our assessment process to reflect and acknowledge that. So there is a question that is specifically about that in the application form.
Awesome.
Yes, and that goes back to what I was saying about site as well. There will be some projects that are tied specifically to a site or an idea of a site or a place, and others that are more general. It is definitely about the idea is to kind of look at the role that art can play in telling the story of an urban setting. What is the thing that art can do in public that no other profession practicing in the kind of public realm can do? And so giving expression to that. So it is about that kind of layering of narratives and experience, but it does not have to be a literal project about, some artists will choose to work that way, but it's not required. I also just saw something about renderings, and renderings or really architectural renderings or really splashy pictures are not a requirement for proposal. They're great if people are able to do them, but we're really, as I said before, trying to make this something that is open to people who are just sort of emerging in this field, or don't have all of the, necessarily have those tools and resources at their disposal. So no architectural renderings and things like that are not required.
This is Mohammed speaking. So there's one really good question here. Will there also be programs of talks, debates, gatherings, professional training as a part of Year of Public Art to support and enhance the art produced?
Yes, there will be. And in fact, that is actually also, I mentioned the third pillar of the program, the idea of kind of interpreting the existing art collection and activity. And there may be individuals who are interested in proposing projects that are more in line with that pillar. So if so you may actually be interested in proposing a talks program or something that is actually about the public art, in the city, or I don't know what your idea may be, but there is that for consideration as well.
Awesome. This is Mohammed again. There's a question here from someone wondering if they could work in a condemned city site. For example, specifically a building that is due to be taken down in the next year.
I would say three things about that. One, sounds very interesting. Two, if it is a condemned, as in contaminated and unsafe site, then I can say that our city technical people will flag that right away. And three, if it's if it is not kind of contaminated and is actually with appropriate precautions safe for people to be in, then that is possible if you have the permission or whatever required of the owner of that site.
Great. So here's a question about.
Sorry, Mohammed, it's Jean. So sorry. I just want to weigh in on this as well.
Yeah.
I would say that condemned sites come with inherent challenges related to insurance and the health and safety issues, not just for the public, but for the artists. So if you're wanting to do something outside of the site, is different than doing something inside a condemned site. So just to keep that in mind. That's all. Thank you.
Great. So this is Mohammed again. I'm just reading a question from Nicola. Hello, and thank you for all this great information. I'm wondering if permit fees normally collected by the city are required expenses within the grant envelope. Also, do budget amounts associated with the city consultation regarding code compliance and possible site selection part of the envelope? Or are the city services provided outside of the grant envelope? Sorry, I'm not understanding what's happening here. Is access to electrical infrastructure feasible for media works? Are electrical charges part of the grant envelope, or would that be partnered with the city? So I think this question is generally about like the permits and things like that. If anyone wants to answer that.
Rebecca, do you want me to do it? It's Jean.
Well, I thought we'd change it up and have you answer first this time.
For sure, okay. Hi, Nicola. I would say that in terms of budgeting, you are it's probably safest to include all your anticipated costs. And if some of those can be covered through relationships with city services, we will do that. But it's better to include them in your overall budget than to exclude them and then discover after that you actually need to pay for some things. Issues like access to electrical infrastructure and the costs associated with that, those tend to be in negotiation with the site. So, and really will depend on how much of an electrical draw a project would have, all those sorts of strange considerations. But again, when we partner, and I'm speaking specifically about Nuit Blanche in this case, but I expect that this is a similar kind of relationship building process that would happen with ArtworxTO, that we often can negotiate that as part of the relationship. So the provision of providing access to electrical and all of the costs associated is often included. That being said, Nuit Blanche is one night, not 3 months. So that's also something just to take into account.
And just to add to that, yes, that is the strategy that we're taking with ArtworxTO, which is to once we know what all the permitting across the programs, what the permitting requirements will be, we're going to try and do that. Try and make a request to the permitting departments to be able to waive those. But there will be some more complicated than others, and we can't. It is safer to put those costs into your budget than not. For example, if you have something that requires, you know, a paid duty officer there all the time, that's going to be a prohibitive cost both on the city side and on yours. That would not be something that would be waived. But there may be, if it's more straightforward permits, our strategy is going to be to work across departments to have these waived, but it's better to have them in the budget so that you don't get a nasty shock should it not work out.
Great. So this is Mohammed again. I'm just reading a question about the legacy program. For the ArtworxTO application, would we need to indicate that our project is intended as a legacy program, or is that determined by the jury?
Intended as a legacy program. I'm not really sure what, I mean, there's, so the legacy, there are sort of legacy programs being developed on the ArtworxTO side. If the question is about leaving something for longer than December 31st, 2021, I think if you want to indicate that it is something that could potentially stay beyond that that date, then you can do that within the proposal. But I would not advise putting this forward as a permanent, if it's something that you're thinking may be able to stay longer, I wouldn't kind of put it first and foremost as a permanent commission, because there will be much more concern around construction and durability and longevity that could become prohibitive. It's better to actually put something in as a proposal that could potentially stay on longer, and bearing in mind that you have to have also those deaccessioning and removal pieces in your budget.
Great. And just one last question about marketing and PR, about the costs associated with the project. So someone's asking marketing and PR security and etc. on a large scale. In meeting with interested parties with larger sites, they are asking about what they will be responsible financially for the project. Being a part of a project outsourced of sites. So I think what they're asking is like, in partnerships, what is the responsibility of the city and what is the responsibility of the venue, of the host?
So there will be agreements with each of the partners that we secure through this round that will articulate responsibilities with respect to communications and PR and things like that. I know that within Nuit Blanche, there's an obligation to have, for site, for venue partners, for example, to have Nuit Blanche signage, you know, at the sites. That would be a similar, there would be an obligation like that for ArtworxTO as well. On the ArtworxTO side, there is a commitment to helping, to making sure that all of the partner projects are part of the overall ArtworxTO marketing and communications. Security costs and kind of liability would be the responsibility of the venue, the hosting venue. If there is, it sounded like there was some kind of venue involved there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry, Mohammed, it's Jean here. I would say I would try to build the relationship as much as you can with whatever your host partner is, right? And this kind of goes back a little bit to the question that Nicola asked about electricity and that sort of thing. I mean, if you've got a project that's inside a venue or near a venue, or you would want the partner, in addition to providing the site for you, potentially to provide access to electrical services, whether you need to tie into their panels, that sort of thing. Ideally, security could be included in that mix, particularly if there's a liability function associated with that. For the Nuit Blanche projects, those are the kind of things that we request from host partners. So when we're developing the project, we make those requests, and if they can support them, they do, and if they can't, then we find the resources to do that. But generally, I think the expectation is that the project budget needs to include all of the expenses that you're anticipating, but to not hesitate to try to build that partnership with the host organization or site.
Okay, awesome. So this is Mohammed speaking again. I think we're going to wrap up there. If you have any other questions, please take note of everyone's contact information here and get in touch with them directly with your questions. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for attending. Thanks to Deaf Spectrum, to Amanda and Mel for interpreting. And again, this recording will be available on our website, on our YouTube channel, sorry, and Instagram for you to refer back to later. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.